Welcome to the Darkstream. I'm VoxDay, voxday.blogspot.com, and Infogalactic News. And Infogalactic News is relevant to the subject of what we're going to talk about tonight, because one of the first things that I did today was I sent an email to the lead tech star at Infogalactic News, and I said, please remove Breitbart News from the links. Now, why do that? Isn't Breitbart on our side? Aren't they the alt-right news site and so forth? No, absolutely not. Now, one thing that you might have noticed if you follow my blog, or if you follow me on Twitter or whatever, or on Gab, is that you never see, and you never saw me linking to Breitbart after Milo left. And in fact, I almost never linked to Breitbart if it wasn't a piece by Alan Bokhari or by Milo. And so, I was always a little bit dubious of Breitbart. I wouldn't say, particularly suspicious or anything. But I was not impressed by most of the content. I didn't think that it came anywhere close to the level of some of the stuff that WorldNet Daily did. To me, Breitbart tended to remind me a lot more of Newsmax. Somebody talked about all the ads they used to have. I never read Newsmax much, mostly because of all the ads. It's just all the ads, the clickbait, you name it. It was just a bit much. And so, there was a moment where it seemed like there was some hope after Ben Shapiro left. When it seemed like Breitbart did the right thing by not falling for that whole ridiculous, Trump's assistant, ripped off my arm and raped me with it. That ridiculous female reporter. And so, anyhow, there was some hope that they were going to be reasonable, but at the end of the day, they're not. At the end of the day, they went the way that all right-wing organizations do that fail to police themselves. And, that's something that I talk about in SJWs Always Lie. I'll talk about it more in the forthcoming SJWs Always Double Down. But, the problem is that when you set up an organization, you now have to prepare and be careful of who you bring in. And one of the things that conservatives love to do, you have to be very, very careful with conservatives. And if you're a conservative, you have to be very, very careful with your own instinct to show what a good person you are. There's something in the conservative mentality, there's something in the right-wing mentality that tends to cause us to want to prove that, even though we say these things that you might find offensive, even though we say these things that might upset you, those are based on facts and logic, and it doesn't have anything to do with me. I'm a nice person. It's just these ideas that are bad. And so what people do is they leap to embrace the identity politics people. They leap to embrace any oppositional identity that shows any sympathy for right-wing perspectives. And so that's why you always see the women being elevated like crazy. I mean, why on earth are, what's her name, Tommy whatever, or Lauren Southern, or Faith Goldie, even Brittany Pettibone and Tara McCarthy. Now, I like these women. I think that what these women are doing is generally good. You know, some of them have some definitely problematic aspects to what they're the thing. Just because they're hot and good looking, you have to understand that. It's not just because of that. No, I mean, but what you're saying, Faith is the real deal. I mean, she is not the real deal in the same way that 10,000 other men are not. Okay? What it is it's this, and again, I'm not just so you understand, I'm not criticizing these women. I think they're great. But I am observing the obvious fact that they very rapidly got elevated to a position that is, you know, right up there with somebody more like Mike Cernovich or Milo. Guys who have gotten there through consistent hard work and have fought through all kinds of opposition. You know, I mean, I'm not complaining. I know it works this way. I used to joke with my wife about how if I wrote my columns and put her picture on it, that she would have an invitation to get her own Fox News show within 6 months. Because the right does that. And you know it's not just because they're hot. It's not just because they're attractive. It is because they are from a oppositional identity, and the right wing has this desperate desire to bring them in so that they will make the face of the alt-right more friendly to other people from that population. So, for example, Blair White is a good example. You know, any Muslim, any black, I mean, you see it. I'm not a Breivik apologist. I'll come right out and say it. Breivik will be one of Europe's greatest national heroes within 100 years. Anyhow, but that's beside the point. Oh, absolutely, I said. So, anyhow, Saint Breivik. Remember Saint Breivik. Anyhow, so the point is that they do the same thing with blacks. Okay, we're going to get rid of this guy trying to change the subject. What we have to understand is that this instinct, this tendency, has to be dealt with. It has to be resisted. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is you're going to basically open the door to SJW entryism. You're opening it wide open. I mean, look at what always happens. Look at Colin Powell. So, you know, I'm a little bit older than some of you. Some of you may not remember when Colin Powell was being talked about for president. And then, of course, a few years later, he's endorsing Obama. And it comes out that his politics are actually, you know, pretty basic bitch Democrat. This is a surprise? No, it's not a surprise. Okay? And then you see the same thing happening. You see the same thing happening every single election year. Every single presidential campaign, you have the magic Negro. This most recent time, it was Ben Carson. There is nothing that Republicans love to do more than talk about how they would love to vote for a black man like Ben Carson. You hear it every single. I would love to vote for Herman Cain. I would love to vote for I'm spacing on his name. Alan Keyes. I would love to vote for Alan Keyes. You know, we need to get. I mean, Condoleezza Rice was hilarious because, you know, they get a black and a woman. I mean, they were so excited about this. Now, the thing is that there are legitimate black conservatives. There are legitimate female conservatives. There are legitimate, Muslim. There are probably a few, reasonable Muslim conservatives too. But the point is, whenever you run out and grab a token and prop up a token and make the token your face and the voice of your movement, you have just guaranteed your own destruction. You have absolutely guaranteed your own destruction. Why? Because what do SJWs do? I mean, this is something you'll see every single time. I guarantee it. Every single time. I've seen it on corporate boards. I've seen it in companies. I've seen it in various departments in big companies and that sort of thing. What is the first thing that a identity group individual who is raised to a corporate board does? What is the very first thing that a woman on a corporate board does? No, the first woman. Bring in others like them. They immediately start talking about how we need more women on the board. We need more women on the board. Same thing with blacks. I mean, they don't hide it. They come right out and say this immediately. Okay? So even if you have somebody, even if you have this unicorn, this yeah. Yeah, I'm obviously the rare exception to this. I have not been bringing in Native Americans to most of the organizations on which I've sat on the board and so forth. But the point is that actually this in technology you see this with Indians all the time, not American Indians but Indian Indians. They love to do this sort of thing. And so, and again, I'm not saying that there's anything intrinsically wrong with what they're doing. I am simply saying that it is a natural phenomenon. It is a predictable model. It is a reliable reliable predictive model. And so what happened at Breitbart, we knew this was going to happen at Breitbart because of who they were bringing in and who they were elevating. I have heard that the reason that Milo was pushed out was because of somebody named Raheem who basically said he was going to quit because if Milo was not fired. That was apparently the final thing. No, I'm not a fan of Lee Stranahan. Is this a surprise? No, of course not. And so, Katie McHugh is the final straw, in my opinion, because, she was fired after doing a simple tweet. A factual tweet that talking about the link between Islam and terror. And so, that is an indicator. I don't know everybody at Breitbart. I don't know really anyone at Breitbart. I don't pay that much attention to them. But it is very clear to me that there is, it is thoroughly converged. It is thoroughly cucked, and it is not, it is not of the right. It's basically faux right. It's basically National Review Online 2. And it is they're basically doing in 2 years what took National Review about 30. And so you need to understand the process. It's more than just, I'm not trying to just say, look, deal with the reality. This is what's going on with Breitbart. They're not on our side, so don't, treat them accordingly. I'm wanting you to understand the process that this happens. This will happen in your organization. This will happen in your church. This will happen in your social club, and so forth. It happens very, very quickly. Somebody just said that Raheem did the same thing in UKIP. It doesn't surprise me. That's what they do. Ron Unz is interesting and unusual. And so, how do you counter it? You only allow in reliable people, and you do not give any authority to people that seek it. There is a method to the madness. They come in, people come in, we get people volunteering for different projects that we have all the time. And I am always very, very careful, and I do not work with probably 50% of the people who volunteer simply because I don't have sufficient confidence in them. And so, what you do is you allow people in, and you give them very small amounts of authority, but then you do not let them come up within the organization. You basically spin things off and let them run it. And when they are here's the thing. It is easy to conceal your true thoughts, your true intentions, and your real ideas when you are a assistant. All you need to do as an assistant, you don't even have to have ideas of your own. To be a successful assistant, you simply need to get stuff done that you're told to do. But here's the problem. What makes a good assistant does not make a good leader. This is why so many organizations have problems when they run into a succession plan, because the leader has a tendency to trust his number two. Well, his number two is somebody who's basically good at implementing number one's ideas. It doesn't mean that he has the same ideas as the number one. And of course, the number one usually does all the talking. I've sat in a number of interviews with people, and it's kind of funny. Just so you understand, some of you may not know that my dad was a very successful CEO. And he had a company that he started, got to about 100, the equivalent of what today is about 110 million a year in sales. And so I would occasionally sit in with, I would occasionally sit in on these interviews. And it was kind of funny because my dad would talk. And the person would agree with him because they wanted a job. No, I'm not a silver spoon guy. I left and did my own thing very early on. My dad was not influential in either the video game industry or the music industry. But anyhow, I would sit in on these meetings and I'd listen to these interviews, and the executives would talk and talk and talk and talk. And they'd talk about the company, and they'd talk about the plans, and they'd talk about the products. And the person getting interviewed would be going, yes, I agree. Oh, that's brilliant. That's great. And then at the end of it, they would walk out, and then the executives would all talk about what a fantastic candidate this was, and so forth. I'm going to block this guy. No, there were not any loans from my daddy to start my business. But these were not dumb people. These were smart people. These were successful people. But like most people that are sufficiently driven to become leaders, they like to hear themselves talk more than they like to listen. I'm probably guilty of that. Here I am in a medium that I'm talking at you and you're all listening. Okay? So I would probably be susceptible to that too if I wasn't sufficiently self-aware of the problem. And so, so what do? How do you get around that? Get rid of this retard who keeps trying to change the subject. Look, guys, this is not that hard. We're talking about what I want to talk about, not what you want to talk about. Okay? So if you try to bring up other topics and get a discussion going in the comments, I'm just going to block you, and then you never get to watch it again. So this is not a difficult concept. Anyhow, yeah, I did see people disagree with my dad from time to time, and it wasn't a problem. You know, again, this isn't a thing where people are trying to. The executives. It's not that they are looking for yes men. If you told them that, they would actually be horrified. It's just a natural. It's a natural power dynamic where one person has the power and the ability to give the other person what he wants. So, anyhow, and that's a good point. Make allies, but don't bring allies into your group. And when you do bring people into your group, you don't bring them actually into the group. You basically allow them to set up a module that doesn't interfere with what you're doing. And you don't let them come up inside the organization. That's what SJWs love to do. If you want to find an SJW at in a corporation, there are 3 places to look. The first place, and I guarantee that they'll be there, is HR. They love to go into HR. The second place they like to go into is they always want to try to get on the boards. Their whole goal is moving into positions of influence. You know, there's a great chapter. It's a really good book. I highly recommend you read it. It's called Wobegon Boy, and it's by Garrison Keillor. And it's a really good book just because Keillor's a good author. But there's a very telling paragraph where he talks about, you know, it's a novel, and the character is runs a radio station, a college radio station at a sort of Ivy League backup school. And you know, his job is it's getting to the point where he knows that he's going to have to be moving on soon. And he gets an award. It's called the Wally Award for excellence in radio or something. And so he talks about how he doesn't want to go and give a speech, but he knows how important it is to go to these conferences, and he said stand up and hurl thunderbolts about multiculturalism and diversity. And then somebody in a suit offers you $90,000 to sit on a board and give out grants. That is the SJW dream. That is what they want more than anything. And so they are always pushing. They are always pushing for influence. So, you know, the average company would do its entire HR department. Well, the way that you have to ensure a long-term success of a corporation is you need to pick the probable heirs and then send them off to run their own organizations. And whoever succeeds, then you give them a bigger organization. You know, you cannot, this is the mistake that so many companies make, you cannot groom them for leadership by teaching them to be in subservient positions. They will never learn to be leaders. You cannot become a leader by watching a leader. I would rather, if I was running a Fortune 500 company and I needed to find my replacement, the last thing I would do is hire a VP from anywhere. I would rather hire some kid who started his own company and ran his own company with 100 people, because he is somebody who's capable of leadership. And leadership in an organization is far more important than anything else. All the other stuff you can learn. All the other stuff you can bring in advisors. But what you cannot do, what you cannot change, is leadership. Well, with my dad's company, I mean, he wanted me to, he was kind of torn. He wanted to divide it up between my brothers and I, and then he wanted me to be the leader, but that didn't really work because I didn't want it because I was doing my own things. And then, of course, he got into his big tax battle and ended up in prison. So it kind of became a moot point at that point. So, but again, that's not the point. The point that I'm trying to make is that what happened to Breitbart is what is going to happen to every organization. What happened to Breitbart is going to happen to InfoWars. It's going to happen to WorldNet Daily. It's going to happen to every single organization. It's not going to happen at InfoGalactic because I and every other person there knows about the problem. We don't let people in. Same with Castalia House. We have people coming all the time, saying, oh, I want to work with you, I want to do this, I want to do that, And it's kind of funny because the more we look into them, the more you can see that there are problems. So it's pretty easy to detect that. No, InfoWars is not in trouble. I'm saying it will happen to InfoWars probably after Alex goes, if he doesn't come up with a smart succession plan. And actually, he might be doing fine because, for all we know, I mean, he's bringing in Cernovich. Cernovich is the kind of person who could successfully run a place like InfoWars because he's gone off and done it himself, and he's a leader. So maybe they'll be fine. I like Paul Joseph Watson. I don't necessarily see him in that role. Everybody's got different talents. So, but anyhow, the thing is that you need to pay attention to who you're working with. You always need to pay attention to who you're working with. You don't need to agree with them on everything. You don't need to see everything the same way. But you do need to be very, very careful about bringing in people simply because you're so happy that somebody from that oppositional identity group agrees with you. If you do that, you are going to run into trouble. If you do that, you are going to see your organization get converged rapidly as they bring in people. Cernovich wouldn't have to be running it. I will happily talk with Mike on anything. I mean, if they give Mike a show on CNN, I'll be happy to do that. My rule about not talking to the media does not apply to friends and allies. And so, anyhow, it's Minneapolis. So, but we all have different goals. I have no interest in a media career. I have no interest in getting involved in politics, in a direct sense. I just like to write my books, design my games, and be left alone. I'm not a good leader like Mike is. If you want to lead an organization, you need alphas, not sigmas. We're too weird and off in our own world. And so, this guy's stupid. Let's get rid of him. So anyhow, and Fox News is no longer conservative either. Again, you're seeing the same thing with the succession plan problem. Murdoch is being replaced by his kids, and so it's it's going to push to the left. We know that. So anyhow, that's all I had tonight. It's too bad, but this is not a surprise. I would at this point in time, I would just pretty much continue. For me, I'll just continue to ignore Breitbart. But there's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of stuff happening with Mike. There's a lot of stuff happening with Infogalactic. There's a lot of stuff happening with Gab. There's a lot of positive things happening. So, this is all good. Have a good evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.